Hey guys, welcome in, welcome back, if the case may be. This is our 31 Days of Prevention series. We've been going all month long. We're wrapping up, getting close to the end of the month of October, but we've still got about another week or so of important messages to cover. Those of you who don't know, this is our time to come together to share information, inspiration, and motivation to increase awareness about domestic violence and hopefully prevent future and ongoing abuse from occurring once you have a better understanding of some of the balls that are in the air, so to speak, in toxic and unhealthy and in some cases abusive relationships. To that point, my name is Marci Batiste. I'm the founder and executive director of 9 Seconds. We are a progressive nonprofit organization. We have a heart-centered mission and an innovative approach to domestic violence prevention, which is the purpose for this series, to kind of highlight there's many different ways to go about the work of domestic violence. But today's message is really about, I entitled this, Sometimes the Loss is Really the Win. Sometimes the loss is really the win. And it's easy to lose sight of what we're really trying to accomplish. I was thinking about this in the car this evening on my way home from meeting with a client. And I was thinking about, just different scenarios. So many of you know I've got a new book coming out, Help Wanted. Help Wanted comes out in November. And I was really thinking about some of the stories that are in the book, and Jenna in particular, and some of the things that she's been through. And for Jenna, she has not yet grasped the fact that sometimes the loss is really the win. And so what I mean when I say that is oftentimes we want things to work out so badly that we'll forego what we know is really in our best interest. We know that cutting ties is in our best interest. We know exiting relationships oftentimes is in our best interest. But instead, now it's so dark. But instead of addressing the situation and moving forward with what we know we should do, we try and hold on. We try and fix things that are not fixable. And then we wonder how we end up in some of the predicaments that we end up in. And in particular, what I was thinking about Jenna and Tony, the characters that are in Help Wanted. And for Jenna, Tony represented everything good in life, love, and relationships, right? Tony represented what he brought to the table, his representative that he brought to the table in Love Miscarriage was everything that Jenna had been looking for and hoping for and waiting for. But Tony walked out on her without even so much as a sayonara or a see you later. But she was still, once she got through the initial shock, got through the pain of the love miscarriage, she was still willing and had her heart open to trying again with him. And so that's really what goes on. That's where we pick up the story in Help Wanted, so I won't really go into it a whole lot. But here's the thing, like a lot of times we take for granted the fact that our intuition is our own gift. We know intuitively when something's off. We know the sixth sense, the mom meter, whatever the case may be. We know when something's not right. We know when it doesn't sit well with our soul. The challenge is to execute on that knowledge, but we want it so bad. And I think about, even in my marriage, I think about, I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to get married when I did. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to travel abroad, and I wanted to get a job at a magazine and interview amazing people from around the world and tell their stories in this great magazine. And life happened, and I ended up making a different choice for my life, which was to get married. I had my oldest daughter, and as a result, I wanted to make sure that she had a proper home structure that I didn't have. Intuitively, I knew that wasn't for me. It was always about her, but intuitively I knew that this was a mistake, that I shouldn't be doing it, to the point that I had drug out even saying yes for 2 years before I even said yes. But I still did it. And I knew going in that it wouldn't last. And that's, it's a terrible thing to say. And I feel bad for my ex who had to be in relation with me when that was my mindset. But here's what I'll tell you is, once I said yes, I was all in. And so I was committed to making it work, even though it was never what I wanted in the beginning. It was never what I wanted. Hey, T, it wasn't a choice for me. It was a choice for my child, and it was a choice for a family structure. But I was sold out to my decision. And so I wanted it to work so badly. And I stayed in it we were together for almost 18 years. That's how committed I was to it, until it literally broke me inside. But I wanted it to work. And a lot of people felt an incredible sense of loss when it didn't work. And it took a long time for me to realize, thanks for sharing, T. It took a long time for me to realize that loss, the divorce, was really a win. It was not just a win for me. I mean, it hurt in the middle. It hurt a lot of people in the middle. But essentially, it was a win for my ex, too. Like, you were married to somebody who didn't want to be married. That sucks. That would suck. And I was married and didn't want to be married. And I can tell you it sucked. But sometimes we want what we want, and we want to make things work. And there's a saying that I share often: don't spend a lot of time staying attached to a mistake because it took you a long time to make it, right? You got to know when to cut bait. You got to know when it's time to let go, and be able to see that sometimes what appears to be in the moment and in the middle to be a loss is not a loss at all. It's actually a win. It's actually a win. And when you're in an abusive relationship, like I said, intuitively that this ain't that this isn't how it should be, that you deserve better, that there's got to be something else out there, but we clamp down and we plant our feet and we hold on, and we want it to work. We want the abuse to stop, but we want the relationship to work. It is so hard to let go, T. Yes. We want it to work. We want it to work so bad. And people don't understand, like, why do you stay? Why do you go back to somebody who was abusive to you? That's why, because it's hard to see the loss as a win, because you've got all of these things wrapped up into it. You've got all this emotion wrapped up into it. You've got all this time invested in it. You've got sometimes children, and you've got finances, and you've got careers, and you've got, all of these things that are commingled and intertwined together, wrapped up in this thing that's wrong. It's wrong at its core. It's rotten on the inside. Even though it might look fine on the outside, that thing is rotting on the inside, and it's killing you. And you know that it's killing you. You know that you need to go. You know you need to let go. But it's hard to see the win in the middle of loss. No matter what, when relationships end, no matter if they were toxic, if they were unhealthy, if they just weren't what we really wanted, how many times have y'all taken an ex back? You know, everybody judges DV victims and DV survivors because they go back. But I could tell you the number of homeboys I have who talk about the crazy girl, the toxic chick, right? The one who's hey Lisa, who's off the chart, and she goes through his phone. And I was talking to a client yesterday about that, and he was saying that his girlfriend calls him on his, she tracks his phone from her phone. So he was at work one day, and he said he grills chickens outside this Mexican mercado. And apparently when he goes outside of the mercado to where the chicken griller is, his phone registers that he's across the street. And she literally called him at work the other day and said, "Where the hell are you?" And he was like, "Babe, I'm at work." And she's like, "No, you're not. I'm looking at the app. What are you doing across the street? It says you're across the street from work." He's like, "No, I'm here grilling chickens. That's what I'm doing." And this is common practice for her. And so as he and I were talking, I was asking him, you know, like, "Are you okay with that?" And he's like, "Well, you know," and this is what he said. This is what he said. And this is how I can tell y'all, this is a perfect example of how sometimes we would rather stay in it than leave just because we don't want to take an L. We're going to view it as a loss. This is what he said. I said, "Are you okay with it?" And he said, "Well, you know, it's okay." And I said, "Well, what do you mean it's okay?" And he said, "I mean, it's better than a girl who doesn't act like she cares." I'm like, huh? He was like, because he led up to the story and telling me about this incident by telling me she's crazy. Crazy's not okay. Crazy is a loss. Crazy is an L. But we don't see it as an L because we want stuff to work out. Yeah, Lisa, on average, DV victims leave 7 times. I venture to guess the number's higher than that, but that's the stat, it's 7 times. But we act like DV victims are the only one that take toxic exes back and go back into bad and unhealthy relationships. That's not the case. A lot of people go back. A lot of people stay in. A lot of people dig in their feet. There's a lot of people in marriages, hear me now, in marriages who are miserable, who know this ain't that. They know they need to go. They know they're miserable. They know they're not happy. They know this isn't the thing for them, but yet and still they stay because they want it to work. Sometimes, y'all, the loss is the win. Making it work is not always the win. It's okay to say, this ain't that. This isn't what I expected. I thought it was going to be something different. You've changed and I've changed. This doesn't work for me anymore. You know, you don't even have to say that it doesn't work. You can say, this doesn't work for me anymore. And in that moment, you can understand that this is not a loss at all. This is a win. This is me finding my freedom. This is me taking back my independence. This is me reclaiming my future. It's not a loss. The loss is sometimes staying in it when you know this ain't that. Staying in it when you know that piece by piece, day by day, little bits of you fall away. That's the L. That's not a win. Saying what, being in a relationship to say you're in one, being in a marriage so that we can say, oh, we made another anniversary, but yet and still you died 5 years ago inside. That's not a win, folks. That's not a win. But we've got to shift how we think about the wins and the losses as it relates to relationships in general before we can even talk about the relationships that are domestically violent. We got to acknowledge where we are as a society, as a people, and understand that, you know, while it's easy to point the finger at the girl who just got beat up by her dude and say, she's stupid, she should leave, she shouldn't go back, she shouldn't do this. Meanwhile, you sitting in your own house, in your own glass house, miserable as hell. What's the difference between you and her? Nothing. Not from the inside, nothing. There's not a difference. It's the same thing. But nobody wants to have that conversation that says, you know what? Yeah, I went back some times when I shouldn't have. You know how many times Jenna's taken Tony back? And every single time he disappoints her, but yet and still she's still open because he represented everything that she wanted. He represented the story that he sold, the dream that he sold. How many of us are buying the dream and realizing that the dream isn't what we got, but there's no returns and no refunds? Sometimes you just have to throw it in the trash and realize it doesn't fit. I got a whole closet full of clothes that I need to do that with. It doesn't fit. It doesn't matter that I keep them in the closet. They still don't fit. That investment is the same, regardless of if I throw them in the trash, I give them the goodwill, or I leave them hang. They don't fit. And more than likely, they're probably never going to fit again, and that sucks. And that's just talking about shirts, dresses, slacks, jeans. Jeans are the worst. But people sometimes stop fitting. And we need to take them out of the closet. We need to let it go. Yeah, bless and release. You know, sometimes we look at relationships and say, oh, it fell apart, it ended, it did. No, it's complete. The process is complete. And that's what I like about my marriage. That's what I like to say. Like, I did what I came to do. My kids were healthy. They were in a stable environment. My career was successful. We had a great house in an amazing neighborhood. The neighborhood that I'd always dreamed of living in. I got to that. I got to everything I thought I wanted going in. And when I got there, I realized this ain't that. This ain't that. And I had to figure out how to extricate myself from the marriage. I had to figure out then how to fix things for my children, because I blindsided everybody. I blindsided everyone. I was good at making it look right. I was good at making what wasn't look like it was. But when this ain't that, you gotta let go. You gotta let go. You gotta move on. Hey, Ayo, my handsome nephew. You gotta let go, guys. There's no win. There's no badge of honor for staying in a relationship that is depleting you. There's no win. There's no awards. There's no nothing. So sometimes take the L. And once you take the L, you start to realize, like, snap, I'm happier. I'm actually better than I was in it, even though I worked so hard to get where I was, and I thought that it was going to be everything is everything, and then it wasn't anything, and then I was stuck. You don't have to stay stuck. That's the L. Staying stuck is the L. Leaving's not the L. Leaving's not the L, but we gotta, as it relates to domestic violence, y'all, we gotta stop pointing fingers at my sister survivors. We got to stop doing that, because every single one of us, regardless if you've been in a domestically abusive relationship, and I won't even go into the ones that technically are, but we don't categorize them as that because it's not physical, and so then it's just, abuse is abuse. And there's a laundry list of types. The cycle is the same, but because you don't have a black eye, you don't point the finger at yourself, but you'll point the finger at my sister survivor or my brother who's a survivor. We gotta stop doing that. We all got work to do. We all need to clean up our houses. We all need to clean out the closets. We all need to go and see what doesn't fit anymore. And this is, I'm just talking about from a relationship standpoint. Let's talk about the family relationships, the familial bonds that don't. Just because blood flows doesn't mean this is that. Just because we're related by genetics doesn't mean you're the win. You can still be an L too. And extricating yourself from that, that's where your win is. So that's the message for tonight, guys. I hope that if you're someone who's in a relationship and you know this ain't that. You know you're not happy. You know that it's toxic or unhealthy, or even if it's just not what you want, it doesn't even have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be abusive. It doesn't even have to be toxic to not fit. Like I said, I got a closet full of clothes that don't fit. I don't want to get rid of them because I keep telling myself, oh, I'm gonna lose weight again. Girl, bye. Get rid of them. Go find something that fits. Make yourself feel better. Start working on the new you. Start creating that new normal. Start building out. And in the midst of that process, I promise you, you'll start to view the win. You'll start to feel like it's winning. You'll start to feel like you're reclaiming bits and pieces of yourself again. You'll start to feel like your sense of self is coming back. You have to take back your independence. Nobody's going to give it to you. There's not anybody who can tell you, hey, Marion. There's not anybody that can tell you when it's time to cut bait. You have to decide that. And there will be times, I promise, there will be times when you're ready to cut bait and nobody else understands it. Case in point. I was done. My marriage was done. It didn't mean it was done for everybody else. It was done for me. And for me to breathe again, I had to take back my independence. I had to reclaim who I was. Matter of fact, I had to start figuring it out. But then I realized I was so used to being in relation and in a relationship that I didn't know how to be outside of one. And then that started a whole cycle of me making bad relationship decisions after my marriage. None of those were any better. I miss you too, Miss Marion. We need to connect for sure. None of those relationships were any better because I didn't fix me. I didn't figure out what it was that I needed. I was trying to fill gaps and fill spaces, but it wasn't it wasn't it wasn't doing what I needed it to do. Those relationships were basically just killing time. And even though I was in them and in the moment, a lot of times they felt like I was winning and I felt like I was happy at times. I wasn't. And without fail, every time I got the courage to cut bait and say, you know what? This doesn't work for me. This doesn't work for me. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying this doesn't work for me. My heart doesn't feel right. Okay? So that's the message tonight, guys. I'm going to jump off of here. Lisa Louisi had to learn to love myself. Being alone, always felt need to have someone, even settling for unhealthy. Yep, that was me too. That was me too. Matter of fact, true story. From the time I was 17 until I was 42, 43. The longest I had ever been single was 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And so I would go from one, it wasn't like churn and burns. They would be relationships and they would be long-term relationships. But this wasn't that. It wasn't what I needed. It wasn't what my soul was crying out for. I had to figure that out on my own outside of this relationship carousel that I was on. And so now we've gone on, what, 6 years, 7 years? Am I open? Absolutely. Am I out looking? Absolutely not. Yeah, Marianne, I would love to see you. Hopefully, yes, definitely in December. Absolutely not. It's going to happen when it happens, right? But just like I talk about in Help Wanted, I had to figure out what those things were that I really wanted. I'm looking for the page where I made the list. Oh, here it is. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to read y'all this, then I'm going to get off of here. So this was the list. It's in the book. It's in the book Help Wanted, but it's actually my list. So, true story. So, a lot of Jenna is me. If y'all study Jenna, you'll learn a lot about me. But here's the list. And so she said, here's the list that I came up with of what I want out of a relationship. I left some space for you if you want to make your own list, but child, listen, don't get discouraged. I have hope and faith, and the right man is out there. And this list is going to help me manifest him. And rest assured, what I require, I can also provide. That's also important, y'all. So here's the list. And mind you, like I said, it's in here, it's in the book, it's Jenna's list, but this is me. It says, I want God at the center of it. I want to know he comes to me healed and whole. I want to feel safe and protected. I want to know that he has my back no matter what. I want to know that I'm a priority in his life. I want to feel secure that we're on the same track and we want the same things for our future. I want him to have a vision for us, for our relationship and our blended family. I want someone who will talk with me about everything, even when the conversation is tough to have. I want us to desire one another, not to need one another. I want the relationship to be a value add to my life, not to become my life. That was huge for me. I want the relationship to be a value add to my life, not to become my life. And that's what happens a lot of times is we bury ourselves in these relationships and they become us, or we mold and mutate ourselves to become part of that duo, right? Not this time. I want the relationship to be a value add to my life, not to become my life. I want him to listen, to really hear me. If you've never, if as a woman, and I'm only going to speak for women, hey Tanil, I'm only going to speak for women. But, and I shared this I was on a podcast, When Black Men Talk. We did an episode called When Black Men Listen. It's on my website if y'all want to listen to it. But the biggest thing as a man that you could do for a woman is to hear her. Hear her. Don't just listen, but hear her. And hear her sometimes when she's not even speaking. Hear her. Let me go on with the list, y'all, because don't get me started. I want him to see me for who I am. Don't see the Facebook me. Don't see me on stage or on a video or any. Don't worry about the author thing. Don't see me. See me. See who I am. Know who I am. Learn who I am. I want him to be consistent in how he engages with me. I want him to honor his word and move with integrity. Can we get a little amen on that? I want him to be my partner and make room for me to be his partner. I want him to be as glad about us as I am. I want him to be passionate about us. I want to trust that he'll do the right thing even when no one will know. I want a man who is both motivated and motivating. Okay, did y'all catch that? Motivated and motivating. Like we gotta build each other up. It can't be one-sided. I want him to match my efforts in the relationship. I want his yes to be his yes and his no to be his no. In other words, don't be wishy-washy. Don't be flaky with me. If you say what you mean and mean what you say and walk in that truth. I want him to be consistent in how he shows up. I want to know that, and this isn't in there, but to be that consistent how you show up, I want to know that how I met you is how I can rely on you, because those are the characteristics that first attract me. And the last one says, and I want dope sex on a regular basis. We ain't gonna forget that. Dope sex, substance, and sustainability, right? But that's it, guys. Like, you have to know what you want out of something before you go into it. Whether it's a meeting, whether it's a contract negotiation, or whether it's a relationship. Know what you need. Know what you want. Because I guarantee you, when I got clear, communication, clarity, and consistency, those were the three things that I talk about in this book. When I got clear about what I wanted and I sat down and I made that list, things become a whole lot easier. You no longer question, is this a win or is this a loss? You know, because you got the job description. You've written the job description for the relationship that will sustain you. How many, I know there's a few people on here. How many of you have ever sat down and thought, what do I need out of a relationship? Because if you don't know what you need, how are you ever going to communicate that to somebody else and expect them to show up appropriately? How are they supposed to fill that space and show up how you need them when you don't even know how you need them to show up? Communication, clarity, and consistency are the three things. And if they can do those three things, all those other things that I just listed off will be checked off. Hey, Justin, how are you, honey? All those other things will be checked off. So that's the message tonight, guys. I know I said I was going to get off here, but I started on that. But as always, if you hear something, share something. Share this video out, because I guarantee you, normally I say, you just never know who's listening and what they need to hear. I can guarantee you 1,000% there's somebody on your timeline right now that needs to hear that message, that needs to really truly think about the situation and the circumstance that they're in and that they're facing, And like I said, it's not always an intimate partner. Sometimes it's family. Sometimes it's friends. You got to get clear about what you need and be able and willing to say when this ain't that. Cut bait, call it, and realize that sometimes the loss really is the win. And on that note, I'm going to wish y'all all good night. Please share this message out, and we will talk soon. I love you. Mwah! And that's it for tonight. As always, guys, we'll be back tomorrow with another message for our 31 days of prevention. In the meantime and in between time, stay well, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed, stay all of the above. But most of all, be clear about what you need and don't be afraid to cut bait if you need to. Sometimes the loss is really a win. Good night, guys.